Good evening from New York. I'm Ari Melber. Our top story tonight involves one of the most powerful movie studios in America kneecapped in an attack by very sophisticated hackers who are serving the interests of, yes, one of America's greatest enemies. It sounds like the plot of a movie, but it's actually about the plot of a movie. Sony Pictures Entertainment is under siege tonight, fallout growing from that huge, unprecedented cyber attack on the company starting 3 weeks ago. The hackers, who call themselves Guardians of Peace, took down Sony's computer systems in late November, posting a warning that the breach was just the beginning and promising to expose the company's secrets if it did not, quote, obey the group. The hackers followed through on their threat, gradually releasing a pretty staggering amount of hypersensitive information. You've probably heard about some of it. It included posting 5 full Sony movies, 4 of them unreleased, to big file-sharing networks, making public the script for the new James Bond film, including some embarrassing notes from executives concerned about the ending of that movie. The hackers also posted internal emails that included racially tinged jokes between executives about President Obama's potential movie viewing habits and messages in which company executives insult big-time actors and directors and criticize their own upcoming Sony films. And the hackers revealed the personal data of celebrities and many, many of the company's employees, 47,000 social security numbers, just massive. Now, former employees of the company have filed a pair of class action lawsuits saying that Sony itself failed to properly secure some of that sensitive employee data. Now, at this point, let's be clear. Nobody knows who's behind this Sony hack specifically, but there's a lot of speculation. Many have pointed fingers at North Korea itself, which has denied involvement, but it did call the hack, quote, a righteous deed. North Korea took offense at this new Sony movie. It's called The Interview, and it uses a plot to kill Kim Jong-un. This summer, the country called it, quote, the most blatant act of terrorism in war, and said the movie's release will absolutely not be tolerated. Now, last night, one of the stars of The Interview, Seth Rogen, who also co-wrote and directed the film, was asked about it on the Colbert Report.
Is it appropriate to make jokes about real things in the world?
I personally think it is appropriate to make jokes about real things.
Did you think about changing his name at all? Like calling him, like, you know, Phil Jong-un?
We actually did, yes. We did, and then we thought, like, whose feelings are we trying to spare by doing that?
Right.
Kim Jong-un?
Mm-hmm.
That probably wouldn't have worked. Now, this afternoon here at All In, we confirmed that Rogen and his co-star James Franco have now canceled all planned media appearances for this movie, The Interview. It is coming out on Christmas Day. And meanwhile, the hackers have posted a new batch of Sony files. This is just today, along with a new threat in which they actually refer to the 9/11 terrorism attacks and warn people to stay away from places where The Interview will be shown. Those are strong threats, but we want to also tell you tonight that DHS says it has no credible intelligence to indicate an active plot along these lines. Joining me now to get right into it, Joe Bell Bruno, editor of Company Town. That's the LA Times Business of Hollywood section. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Ari.
Is Sony going to pull this movie?
Yeah, that's the big question. You know, this whole thing is gone. It's crossed over from surreal to criminal, and now just sort of very obscure and bizarre. Today, I don't know. I mean, there is chatter all over Twitter. There's chatter in every newsroom. Will they pull it? Will they put it out? I know today that theater owners groups have met behind closed doors and over the telephone to determine if it's safe to put this movie out, deciding if they want to pull it or not. And will Sony go ahead with it? So far, they've said nothing.
And give us just a flavor, especially for people who've heard a bit about this but may not realize just what kind of corporate foreign policy disaster this has been, which is not to say what should be done about it, but it's clearly huge. What is the flavor, what is the mood in L.A. about all this?
Well, I know one thing is for certain. Everybody in Hollywood out there right now is emptying their email boxes, securing their servers, and just trying to double down on security. There has been so much data that's been lost out of Sony, or at least been put in the public hands. Imagine the email of the chief executive of NBC or MSNBC, all of those emails coming out. Imagine all of the data, including how much money people get paid, how much money executives have on expense accounts. Even their health information has been leaked, and it's been quite a chore for the press, for the media, for us to go through it all. and know what's exactly appropriate to put out and what is not.
Well, and clearly, Joe, not just the inconvenience or the problems of that, but that as part of what we can see from reporting is a concerted effort to intimidate and bully people in the United States from either putting this film out or going to see it, as we're reporting in the threats. And yet there's something really problematic here, because we think of ourselves as a country that has a pretty good record on free speech in the U.S. You don't get sent to jail in this country for making movies. But in a global commerce environment like this, what is the fallout here for these companies and actors and folks for the next movie? Because if there's going to be this kind of headache, sanction, and damage, you got to think this is going to have an effect of chilling and censorship going forward.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, in the argument of, are they going to pull it, are they going to go through with it, I can't imagine there is a CEO office in this country with people looking at this very carefully and very closely to see what happens. You don't want to let a foreign government, if it is North Korea, or a group of anonymous hackers in Asia or in the Middle East or in Russia or wherever they might be, you don't want them being able to radically alter a company's ability to do business. So by pulling this movie, it sends out a very dangerous signal. When you keep thinking about George Bush saying, you know, don't let the terrorists win, and in some ways, that's really what it all boils down to.
Yeah, and the power of satire, the power of comedy here. This is a film that we haven't seen yet, but that makes these arguments. Do you think, basically, that's the takeaway, that they regret ever going down this path in this film, Sony?
Well, we know that for certain, in some respects, the leaked emails that have come out that we've reviewed show intense debate inside the studio, along with its stars and Seth Rogen, all in chains of emails with executives debating how to, you know, how to finish the movie, how to create an ending that might not be as gory, and you know, they are quite worried throughout the whole thing about what kind of retaliation they can get. In some of our reporting today, documents reviewed showed that Sony actually went ahead and either commissioned or worked with the Rand Corporation to get a detailed analysis of what kind of movies have talked about North Koreans, what the reaction was in North Korea and other sensitive overseas markets. So they were well aware from the entire shooting of this movie that this was a problem.
Yeah, Rand, the Army think tank there, and obviously our military and intelligence services watching this closely. Thanks for your reporting, Joe Bell Bruno. This is not just a story, of course, about the fallout from the Sony hack itself. It's also about how reporters report on this kind of stolen information. Now, screenwriter Aaron Sorkin, whose emails, we should say, were leaked here and is the subject of other leaked emails in this hack, said news outlets who have reported on what was revealed by Guardians of Peace are, he wrote this in the Times, morally treasonous and spectacularly dishonorable, and he continued that case today on the Today Show.
Is there anything in these emails at all that's in the public interest, that points to wrongdoing at the company, that helps anyone in any way? There isn't. There's just gossip there.
And we go to someone who's actually been reporting a lot on all this material, Kevin Roose, senior editor at Fusion. What do you say to Aaron Sorkin's argument there? There's no value in these materials.
Well, I'm a big fan of Aaron Sorkin's screenwriting. I can't say I appreciate his take on journalism ethics nearly as much. I mean, what he says there is just patently wrong, that there's nothing in the public interest in these documents. We at Fusion have reported stories involving these documents that showed a gender pay gap between two co-presidents of a Sony Pictures studio, one of which was a woman and one of which was a man.
Yeah, and we've got that with Jennifer Lawrence and Amy Adams as well, being paid less than their co-stars.
Exactly. We've pointed to race-based pay disparities. We've talked about the failure of Sony Pictures to protect their employees' personally identifiable information, which is something that is illegal. So I don't know that you can say with a straight face that there's nothing of public importance that's been revealed in those emails, and I don't think that's Aaron Sorkin's call to make anyway.
Right. I mean, he's putting himself out there as an arbiter. He also, as we've said, is deeply involved in this one. But we know, as you mentioned, his screenwriting. Everyone remembers A Few Good Men. Everybody wants the truth. Some people can't handle the truth, as he put it there. There's a lot of truth, though, that is in reporting the product of unauthorized disclosure or even criminal acts. What do you say to the argument of people here that, look, these are the fruits of crimes, related to potentially allies of our enemies and should be treated a little differently?
Well, information is not always clean. I mean, there are decades of precedent of reporters using documents that were illegally obtained, and the legal and ethical right to report on that stuff has been long established. But I think one thing that's important to understand is that the alternative to reporting on the Sony hacked documents is not making them disappear. That's too late. Right? So the alternative is just having them out there with no context, with no news judgment applied to them. And I think news organizations are and will continue to make their own judgments about what stuff to select.
You're saying something that's
but this stuff isn't
this,
going back. The toothpaste is out of the tube.
And that may be. But also there's something weird here in everyone presupposing that we can figure out whether each leak will be good for society. People refer to the Pentagon Papers. At their time, that was hugely controversial. Over the years, that's become a point of consensus, that it was a good light to shine on Vietnam.
Absolutely, and I don't want to defend the choices that every news organization is making. I know that we've been very scrupulous about reporting things that we felt were in the public interest, or and you know, we haven't reported Social Security numbers or anything private and that could really damage a lot of people's lives in an immediate way. But I think that these judgments are hard. This is unprecedented. We've never seen something like this, and I think this case is going to be taught in journalism schools for a very long time.
Yeah, it is fascinating, and it has just been spiraling bigger and bigger, which is why we wanted to get to it tonight. Kevin Roose, thank you for your time. Now, this show has spent a considerable amount of your time, if you've been watching, questioning whether the grand jury testimony in the Darren Wilson case from Witness 40 was really credible, something Chris Hayes has been reporting on. Now, there's a new bombshell report that says it was not, plus a response from the chief of the Cleveland Police to my interview with the head of the Police Patrolmen's Association from last night, and it's somewhat surprising. That's next.